Welcome back to Justice and Peace with your host, Brian Buckmire. Now, I'm dissecting not only these cases of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor, but we're also talking about the reactions we're seeing in our communities and abroad in the protest. First, yesterday we saw the preliminary hearing of Ahmaud Arbery, and we heard some very interesting, I think is the most softest way of putting it, testimony. But at the end of it all, we heard that these charges were sufficient to go forward towards trial. Let's take a listen to some of that we heard in the preliminary hearing.
Stated on the crime scene that was overheard by one of the defendants and shared with investigators prior to police arriving, correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And though this may be an uncomfortable conversation for the benefit of the court and for the record, we're making it clear that this is not your quote, it's not the GBI's quote. This is a quote from a statement of Mr. Bryan as to what he heard Travis McMichael say prior to police arriving, correct?
Very much so, yes, sir.
Understanding that and understanding that it might be a little uncomfortable to talk about the words because it involves a curse word and something else, I need to ask you about that quote. Can you please articulate for the court what Mr. Bryan said he heard Travis McMichael say prior to police arriving and after the fatal shooting?
Yes, Mr. Bryan said that after the shooting took place, before police arrival, while Mr. Arbery was on the ground, that he heard Travis McMichael make the statement, "Fucking."
I understand that you have said that Mr. Bryan has put this statement coming out of the mouth of Travis McMichael, this horrible thing. In looking so far in the case, whether it's on Travis's interaction through the neighborhood Facebook page or on his phone, have you seen any other evidence that he has used that horrible N-word anywhere else?
Yes, sir, many times.
Okay, and where?
There's on his Instagram post, he responds on one. I do not recall every time it was there, but I can give you some examples of numerous times. On the Instagram post, somebody sends him, this is on January 2nd of 2020, someone sends him a video or a picture. We were not able to recover that from the phone. That's one of the reasons why I have a search warrant out for Instagram. They send that out. He says, makes the comment, that would only be better if they'd have blown that effing N-words, or they'd blown that N-words head off.
So somebody sends him something.
And then he responds with that text.
And this is an Instagram that you've identified belonging to Travis McMichael?
It's correct. It was on his phone, too.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Anywhere else that you've seen this?
Yes. There are several conversations, and I do not, they were on the phone. I do not agree if they were through instant messenger or through text. That I do not recall offhand. Okay. But one particular one that comes to mind is he made the statement that he loved his job because he was out on a boat and there weren't any N-words anywhere.
Did you get any information that he worked side by side with African Americans? Did you ever discover that in your work?
I don't recall.
Or that he had been awarded any accommodations for his work as a Coast Guard officer?
Again, I haven't reviewed his Coast Guard file.
Okay.
All right, so I'm joined with criminal defense attorney Tiffany Simmons. Tiffany, when you first heard that testimony of the use of the N-word gratuitously, what did you think?
What I think is that a racist person is doing what racist people do. And that's what I thought.
Yeah. Now, we didn't hear, this is the first time we've heard it. And what kind of perplexed me is, I agree with what you're saying, is this wasn't the first time the police department heard about this. This is the GBI testifying to it. So why did previous district attorneys seem to think, well, this was a citizen's defense, citizen's arrest, they were defending themselves? If they knew all of this, then why did they drop the case? Why did we have to wait this long?
Well, you're dealing with a system where, as we see, those local district attorneys were friends. They worked with these people. So, of course, they didn't want to arrest their friends. However, a human life is well worth more than a friendship, well worth more than an ideal or belief you may have about a certain race. So yeah, the testimony was hard to digest what I saw. It was hard for him to get the testimony out. However, we cannot heal what we won't reveal. And unfortunately, racism, white supremacy, whatever these murderers felt, they showed it, they expressed it, and now they need to be held accountable.
Yeah. So, like you said, in the first clips we show you are them expressing that racism. So now it's out there. We know that there's some sort of racist or race, whatever you want. It's racism. Let's just call it that. Okay. Now let's look at the testimony where it comes into whether or not the McMichaels are using self-defense or Ahmaud Arbery. Let's take a listen.
It's your decision then, as you move forward through the case, that you are of the opinion that this was not self-defense by Mr. McMichael.
I don't believe it was self-defense by Mr. McMichael. I believe it was self-defense by Mr. Arbery.
Okay, that's why he took the warrant, the way he took the warrant.
Yes, sir. I believe Mr. Arbery was being pursued, and he ran till he couldn't run anymore, and it was turning back to a man with a shotgun or fight with his bare hands against a man with a shotgun, and he chose to fight.
And not to run through a side yard or not to run through another yard or anything like that.
I think his thing was to, I believe Mr. Arbery's decision was to just try to get away. And when he felt like he could not escape, he chose to fight.
But it is clear from the investigation that for the driving and the interactions that took place all around that area, that no shot was fired at any time by anybody prior to the hand-to-hand combat that Mr. Arbery and Mr. McMichael engaged in.
That's what the evidence
That's
so
what
far
the evidence
shows.
shows so far.
Yes.
Okay.
So, Tiffany, on one sense, I understand what the defense attorney is trying to do. They're trying to implant their theory. It was my guy using self-defense and not yours. But to me, I think that this defense attorney would have researched what self-defense was and realized his client's not entitled to it. He's having a rough time with this witness. What did you see?
Exactly. As any criminal defense attorney, you're going to try to put your best theory forward. The state has to prove their case. However, unfortunately, the laws have kind of allowed for these sort of situations to continuously happen over and over, especially where people such as these murderers have felt as though legally they have this right, or, they can defend whatever. It makes no sense for someone to say that it was self-defense when they were the perpetrators of this action. These murderers were the people that had the weapon, that had the vehicle, that chased down Ahmaud Arbery as he was jogging in his neighborhood. So, the self-defense theory, that is very just a loose theory. But again, as I always state, criminal defense attorneys, we don't have to prove the state's case. We just have to prove reasonable doubt. And they are doing their best effort. However, it's not going to work.
Yeah, so let's kind of talk about that, because we're thinking about theories. We obviously saw some theories explored in the preliminary hearing. And of course, the defense attorneys are not married to any theory at this point. We're not at a criminal trial. This is just a preliminary hearing. But did you see any line of questioning that you may have not thought about beforehand, like whether or not Ahmaud Arbery had mental health? Like, that came out. I don't think that was successful for them. When the first shot went off, they seem to be trying out different theories. Did any of them make sense?
No, because none of it makes sense except for the facts. And, unfortunately, these people, they preyed on this person and, they murdered him. There are no other theories. The best thing that a criminal defense attorney can do in this situation is honestly admit what the facts are and do their very best to be the voice for their client. But in this, the facts aren't on their side at all.
All right. Well, we're going to continue with more in the protests as well as the cases that are leading up to the protests in this country here on Justice and Peace after this break. So this week saw some resemblance of justice for two cases. We saw in the George Floyd case that 3 officers were not only arrested and charged, but some of those charges went up. Then we saw yesterday in the Ahmaud Arbery case that those charges were sufficient to go forward. But there's one more case. Breonna Taylor. Her case has languished for way too long, and we haven't heard anything about that case in quite some time. What we did hear is that her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, the person who's alleged to take the one shot outside the home and struck an officer, that his case has been dismissed and he's been released. And a part of that, we got to hear his 911 call as to what they were thinking was going on in the home when those officers knocked down the door. Let's take a listen.
911, Operator Harris, where is your emergency?
I don't know what's happening. Somebody kicked in the door inside my girlfriend.
Okay, where are you located?
I'm at Springfield Drive, apartment 4.
Springfield Drive, apartment number 4?
Yes. Oh, my God.
Okay, how old is your girlfriend?
She's 26. Bring it. Oh my
You said 26?
God.
Where was she shot at?
I don't know. She's on the grill right now. I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, mama.
You said she's 26. Is she alert and able to talk to you?
No, she's not. Breathe. God.
Okay, and you said you're in apartment number 4?
Hell. Oh, my God. Yes, hell.
What's your name, sir?
Oh, my name is Kenneth Walker.
You said Kenneth?
Hell.
And you said she's 26?
Yes.
Okay, you said Springfield Drive, apartment number 4?
Yes.
Okay. Can you check and see where she's been shot at?
I can't get on her stomach.
Okay. Is she alert and able to talk to you?
No, breathe.
Okay.
I think oh my God. What the fuck? Oh my God.
Can you get her turned over on her back? I need for you to check her and see where she shot at.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I gotta go, Mama.
Okay.
I gotta go you back.
Kenneth, can you hear me?
So it's a lot different in the Ahmaud Arbery case and the George Floyd case. We get to visually see people lose their life, but I think this hits a little differently when you hear it. I feel equally as tormented in the other two, but the question becomes, why aren't we getting more justice there? Tiffany, I'm sure you've heard of the case. They're in their home. Officers break down the door under what seems to be a faulty search warrant. The target is arrested sometime beforehand. One shot comes out of the home. They blindly shoot a whole bunch of bullets, 8 of which I believe strike Breonna Taylor as she's laying in her bed, and she died. And this is the 911 call we hear. I mean, the FBI is investigating. These officers are still getting paid. They're on administrative leave. Why aren't we seeing charges in this case yet?
Well, first, I would like to say happy birthday to Breonna Taylor. Today would have been her 27th birthday. We aren't seeing justice, or we're not seeing charges in this case, unfortunately, because she wasn't able to record her own death. This case has been swept under the rug, and it shouldn't have been. Breonna Taylor was an essential worker. She was, from my knowledge, an EMT. No-knock warrant searches have unfortunately killed a lot of people across this country. Her story is a story of a lot of people where officers have went into homes and they were negligent because they didn't know who was in the homes. Oftentimes it's the wrong address, just as we see in Breonna's case. So what we're seeing, or why people weren't charged, unfortunately, is because probably a video wasn't out. And that is not the justice that she deserves, we deserve as Americans.
And I think we did this intentionally. We did this show on her birthday to celebrate the fact that she's not to celebrate, but to mourn, I guess, to celebrate the life and also to mourn that she should still be here. And she's not because, like you're saying, maybe because there's no video, maybe because an officer was struck. I don't know what it is, or maybe because they were just simply following orders. But we can't fight as hard as we're fighting for George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and say, well, we're fighting this hard because we see video. And then when there's no video but an equally tragic story, we're not going to press as much, because I'm not seeing why there's such a difference in the justice we're getting in these cases. That's my problem here. And to go further, we're seeing the protests. We're also hearing a reaction from those protests that the DEA is being given orders that they can investigate protesters. People exercising their First Amendment rights will now be investigated by the DEA, not looters or rioters or people who are causing crimes, but they're saying actual protesters. I don't see how they're taking one tragic tragedy and trying to make another legal tragedy out of it. Let's take a look at some of these protests and some of these responses to them.
A week straight of protests in downtown Louisville, centering each night around Jefferson Square Park.
We're calling this Injustice Square, so we want to be right here where our city government is and letting them know that we want justice for Breonna Taylor.
So, Tiffany, what are you making of some of the, I don't know what to call it, let's call it the reaction of police departments and the federal government to protesters in terms of their military tactics, their surveillance of people now? What are you making of this?
What I'm making of it is it says a lot about a government that is choosing to invest in military style, allowing police to do whatever they want at this point with with immunity. The laws in this government needs to be reformed. And that's what I take of that. I think that people are reacting what they're feeling. They're reacting out of hurt. They're reacting out of trauma. They're reacting out of realizing what this country is truly built on and stands on. Some people are reacting from a place of love. Some people are reacting from a place of hope. Some people are reacting from a place of just not knowing what to do. And that's what I take
Sorry,
of it.
Tiffany, I
Go
wanted
ahead.
to ask, because some are saying there are some resemblance of change. I know, especially in the Breonna case, the officers are saying as of May 21st, their officers will wear body-wearing cameras. The police chief was removed on June 1st, even though he said he was going to retire at the end of this month. They said on June 3rd they're going to do a top-to-bottom review of the entire police department. What are those? What do you take those? Are those symbolic? Are those actual changes? Is it actual victory? What is that? Because I don't think it's enough.
It's not enough. That's not enough for me. What I will tell America, don't be fooled. That's not enough. Because these are things that should have been taking place prior to that. A person getting fired or retired, they still have options. The people that have been murdered by the hands of police, they don't have options. Their body is no longer here. They can't get fired and go to another job. So no, that's not enough. That's not justice that they're fired and actually a lot of police officers that turn into murderers, they have a history of having complaints, a history of attacking people, a history. This is something that is bigger than just attacking Black people. There is a problem when police are not held accountable. And I implore all of us, there is a problem when every race has an issue with being attacked by police. So that's what I think of this.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like the reaction to the police is really furthering their narrative, at least in a larger scale. I mean, of course, and we've reported it before, there are many instances of peaceful protests where, whether you want to say it's simply symbolic or not enough, you're seeing officers in one way, shape, or form acknowledge that there's an issue. I've seen social media posts of solidarity with some of the protesters from officers, and also symbolic gestures of taking the knee. So we are seeing some positives of it, but it doesn't seem like it's going far enough or sometimes soon enough. The other thing, Tiffany, is we lack so much information about this case. There doesn't seem to be a lot of transparency here. How do we get that transparency from our police departments?
Well, you have to continue to speak truth to power. So today is Breonna's birthday. Let's continue to use our voice. Call the police department, call the mayors. See, we have to not be fooled. Just because people are now being charged or fired, or you have mayors taking a stance against police brutality, don't be fooled, because it's election season. Today is the last day of early voting in the state of Georgia. Get out there and vote. If the incumbent has not been doing their job, you haven't seen anything, select against them. And that's for any party, any affiliation, because we are actually all in this together. So what I will say is, don't be fooled. It's going to take a process for us to build this nation really upon unity and not discord.
Absolutely.
It says a lot if you
Absolutely.
have the Republican Party, you know,
but Tiffany, we gotta,
they have made. So
Tiffany, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we gotta actually go to justice and peace. I know Vincent Velasquez, we got you on the other side. I'll let you go. Happy birthday, Breonna.